happiness. Oh yeah, yeah. Said goodbye to loneliness. Oh yeah, yeah. I never knew I'd miss you. Now I know what I must do. I'm walking back to happiness I shared with you.
I guess I am fairly typical Dundonian. I think that if Scotland has had a chip on its shoulder, then Dundee, in a sense, has one of its own as well. It's a very village-like place. I mean, its accent is like nowhere else, I think. And there you go, it's got a river on one side, and you go up a little bit, and very much into a different kind of part of the country again. It seems to me it's quite an isolated place. It's had a very hard time of it because it's had to kind of reinvent itself. You know, the 3Js and all that kind of thing. My generation grew up believing that Dundee was based on. That's now gone, and that's become a kind of heritage industry more than anything else. I think people always feel quite good about Dundee. I've never had any hassle about being. I mean, occasionally people say to me things like, "I thought you supported Rangers because you live in Glasgow," and the kind of that kind of thing. Music was a big part of growing up for me because if I have an early memory, in the first house that we lived in, there was a porch which had, I suppose, quite a nice sort of residences to it, and with a couple of tennis rackets, and myself and another guy, I can't remember, that wee boy, two of us standing on the porch playing Beatles songs. And then I clearly remember going on a holiday to a seaside town somewhere and constantly singing "She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah." And that's it's a strong memory, given that we didn't actually own a record player.
Every day they write the headlines, talking diamonds, talking steel. Don't talk things that folks don't know about. Talk about money and stuff that's real. Right here in Beetle Line, the bubble is bursting. All things get busted. Some things get builded. Old ladies write letters.
In the 60s, the whole city centre was being kind of churned up. The tenements were knocked down, replaced by other huge multi-storey towers that you can actually see from over the river. And so there was an awful lot of memories of being surrounded by these kind of buildings, and then suddenly these buildings just disappearing.
See that great bridge and watch those trains pull in and out. Those trains, those trains, those trains, those trains. Right here in Beetle Line, the bubble is bursting. All things get busted. Some things get building. Old ladies write letters. Old men dream memories. Back here in Beetle Line, all things are real. Back here in Beetle Line, all things are real. All things are real.
When we first moved out here, about 1963, when they built these new houses that here, they put this extra strip of land, and it was always threatened that they were going to maybe widen the road. So this bit of land we always refer to as the dump. And I see now they've actually planted daffodils. They made it look quite attractive. And loads of kids from the housing schemes and across the way would come along here, walking along, bouncing balls on their way to the park, play football, and I'd be sitting in my bedroom up there, longing to join them, but instead having to sit and kid on to my mother that was working for my whole grades. I haven't been back to this house since 1978, when my parents sold it. And bizarrely, it turns out that the guy who now owns it is Ronnie McElwham, who I first met about 15 years ago when he in fact applied for my old job when I left Dundee. My parents put this fire in. So all gathered around the fireplace and worship it. My parents put this fire. I had a piano here, and I suppose I started writing songs just here, and the noise travelled through next door, and my parents. Amazing moment, just like looking out that window. I've wanted to come back and look out this window. When I was a kid here, actually, lying in bed at night here, you could actually hear people working on the Tay Bridge. My father, along with his sister and my husband, had a business here, which was originally my grandfather's business. And before that, his own father, so it was kind of 3 generations of William Rosses, and then on came me, and they bought this warehouse here, which again was an old Duke warehouse, and they in fact had this whole area here. They rented that part of the building out to a paint shop, and this was their main entrance. And we spent a lot of time in there in the summer, my sister and myself, because we managed to persuade my father to employ us during our summer holidays at various times as children, as students. That, incidentally, is what most people associate with the Kenback Street Clinic. So when you used to say go to Kenback Street, they'll probably thought you had a dose of the clap. My mother thought if I went to a football match I would be murdered, and she forbade us going to football. And I think my dad was kind of had itchy feet to go. My cousins, they were desperate to go to a proper game, and their father was a missionary. And so whatever he said went anyway with my mother. Must have been an end of season match, Dundee United versus Aberdeen, mid-60s. We won 5-0, and I just thought, that's it. You know, I'm supporting a team that beats teams 5-0. Given my sketchy introduction to football, it needed an expert to fill in the gaps. Mike Watson has written the definitive history of Dundee United Football Club. I was going to say that we both sat in this ground many years ago in the same position, but in fact the reality is the ground has changed enormously.
In actual fact, where we're sitting just now is remarkably close to the spot where I used to stand. I was here on this bit of terracing in April 1960 when United beat Berwick Rangers to win promotion.
Right.
16,000 others, 16,000 down, made a huge crowd for what was a Division 2 game.
Yeah.
And that was a year after I'd first been brought here by my father. And really then it was very much a case of the poor relations.
Yeah.
I mean, the place across the road there was where you went if you were in search of glory.
I kind of wrote a song which was for Paul Sturrock's testimonial night, and there was a couple of kind of local references in it. One was that when we did actually get bored, there was the option at the back of the shed, there was a rather tatty bit of corrugated iron which you could actually look over and catch the Dundee reserve game on if you got particularly bored.
Well, there's another interesting story. I know you also did a song called Proud to be an Arab, which for most of the time most United supporters are, because that is the collective noun used to describe us and not the players, as some people think. But I remember when I was writing my history of United and I tried to find the source of that term, and it was been generally thought the most credible answer given was that one day when the pitch had been liberally sanded, to put it mildly, United played well, won the game, and somebody said they took to that sand just like Arabs.
Livingston is on his feet, and there goes the final whistle. Relief for the Swedish bench. IFK Gothenburg have won the UEFA Cup.
It was the most memorable night I'd spent at any football match and in any football ground. Dundee United were a team going out of the UEFA Cup that night, and yet people stayed on when they normally walked away. What exactly happened that night, do you think?
My disappointment was tinged with the fact that it's just a superb occasion, and you will remember that almost to a man and woman the crowd stayed.
Yes.
Saw Gothenburg presented with their trophy, and it wasn't just that they wanted to pay tribute to Gothenburg, who'd been a fair team and had won the game fairly without resorting to any dubious tactics.
Yeah.
It was also the fact, I think, that people had here and we had this occasion and people thought this is a once in a lifetime experience. Don't want to leave the ground. As soon as we leave, the cord is cut, it's over, and they stayed, and they must have been here best part half an hour after the match.
Yeah. Our family went to Hillbank Gospel Hall, which is now known as Hillbank Evangelical Church. It's in Cotton Road in sort of Hilltown area. And it was the place where our parents had gone since they were married, and I was taken there as a baby and grew up there in that, in that atmosphere. People have funny ideas about the church because it's unfamiliar to them. Norman McKendrick has been worshipping here for as long as I can remember, and was a very close friend of my father when he was alive. and still keeps in close touch with my mother.
Such a variation.
The term evangelical is interesting because I think when people envisage that, they imagine the Archbishop of Canterbury with a tambourine in his hand. I mean, happy clappy is a very sort of simple term, but it's not as simple as that, is it? As well as it is quite respectful. For example, there are periods of silence which are...
Well, at the worship service particularly,
Yes.
because we come in, and as I say, it's not a set service, so you could have a period of silence. Someone will read, pray, give out a hymn, and the service just flows on from there as people are prompted to worship, following up something that has been said in prayer, or something that's been prompted from a verse of scripture.
How long have people been worshipping in Hillbank?
Well, it's been here as it was a mission for a long time, and then the numbers were dwindling, and in the mid-1950s a group came up from Herman to really get it going again, your mum and dad included. I think, without trying to be patronising in any way, your mum and dad were our role models, and they made us very welcome. I, as I say, came in from the outside. Mira was a member here, but we often were at your mum and dad's. As you recall, they had their house open on a Sunday evening for all the young people.
I think the kind of things that as a child you didn't appreciate were the fact that we weren't encouraged. We certainly didn't play much on Sundays in the park, for example. There was no time back and forward to church most of the time, but we weren't really meant to play football. My parents kind of relaxed in a lot of these things as we grew older. I think as kids become kids, I think people change, but we didn't do much of that. The television wasn't on, certainly when we were younger on a Sunday, and so I never ever knew what the golden shot was. When I grew up in Dundee, everyone knew someone who worked in Timex. So in 1993, when the workers were locked out of their factory and the dispute was told in newspapers and television across the world, I wanted to come up for myself and see what was going on the picket line.
I've been in Camperdown Park for many things, Sunday school picnics and lots of other things, and winching behind the trees and all that kind of thing. This is definitely the best Camperdown Park has ever looked to me, I think. I'm extremely proud that I'm from Dundee. I'm extremely proud. 340 people in this climate, after all these years of Tory rule, are still outside their factory, still picketing, still not letting the scabs go through. That's something to be proud of from Dundee, I would say.
A year after that rally in Camperdown Park, Dundee rep asked me to provide music for a play based on the Timex dispute. One of the main characters in the play is Charlie Malone, who during the last few years of Timex was a key shop steward at the factory. Charlie, this is the first time you've actually been back here.
Yep, it's basically the first time in 5 years, and as I said before, it looks different with the gates open.
If my job depends on it, I'm crossing that picket line. There's a number you can ring. The pickers up at Lindsay Street at 7:30, and there's 4 of us got on the bus. And the police are there, and so are Kid and Leslie and all that lot. Somehow they knew where the bus would be.
What are you doing?
I'm keeping my job.
It was an amazing production. The scene had been recreated that accurately. You suddenly found yourself back in a position, and it was as if you knew the next word that was coming out without even having heard it before. You knew because they were your words, and there was somebody else saying your words, and it was, and you could feel it in the crowd. It was almost like like being back in the same atmosphere.
Our main aim at this point in time is to encourage our workforce to come back to work.
The main thing is that we stand together, and we don't let management intimidate we.
The future we have ahead of us is one we have to work together to achieve.
Stand together.
Work together.
Had the production solely focused on this last chapter, then I would have thought it had been inappropriate. But it was to say to people who maybe didn't understand what actually went on in institutions like this is what these places were about. And the music helped that, because you had almost this cross between vaudeville and, I feel like, 1970s protest songs almost, you know. It brought this whole range of things together. And I think that was part of the culture in there. It changed over decades, and people had different experiences.
far beyond. Oh, the light, that working light stretches from where the world began. We were on the line. We were on the line. We stand together on the line. We stand on the line. Better not cross that line. We will not be broken. We stand on the line. We stand on the line.
Dundee High School had its reputation went before it as being a little bit toffee-nosed because it was an exclusive school, fee-paying school. And I must admit, the first 2 years I found absolutely brilliant fun. My sister was... it seemed to be that most boys in 4th, 5th and 6th seemed to want to go out with her. So the starting point for going out with her seemed to be to kind of make pals with her wee brother. So I kind of got on fine until she left. Most of the things that I was any good at school were not encouraged. In fact, the only thing I ever came top up was painting and drawing. G.C. Stewart was our history teacher. He was assistant head of school, and in fact, he's retiring this year. We feared and loved him in equal measure, and incurred his wrath if our hair was in any way too long.
I remember some of them used to come along on a Friday afternoon. They'd come and borrow money for a haircut. Come and pay it back dutifully, of course, at the beginning of the next week. And there were 2 or 3 lads for whom I insisted. I got a note from the hairdresser saying that the hair had actually been cut, because they removed half an inch from the length of it. But as I was saying, I think in these days I was perhaps seen as the pursuer of the long hair and the schoolmaster with the charisma bypass.
Well, that's... I on the record, I'd like to say that's in no way true, because although you were the pursuer of the long hair, you certainly weren't the charisma bypass. You came over as someone who clearly loved your subject, enjoyed teaching per se, and enjoyed teaching us history. Is that how you feel about it now?
Maybe at the end of the day, education is largely about helping people find 2 important things. One is roots. The fact you've come back today gives us a little hint on that one. And secondly, of course, maybe I'd like to think we also help to give them wings. So happens yours wings were maybe the wings of a fairly tuneful linty.
I used to work for a very short time in teaching, 2.5 years, and I used to go in the staff room on a Monday morning to see people filling in their polls coupons for the following Friday, hoping they could escape. And we jokingly used to have a thing in the school that I taught in as the escape committee, and it was your turn to jump off the roof.
Is there a war?
There are a lot of people who don't enjoy teaching, but you're someone who has spent so much time in teaching and clearly still enjoys it.
I have no doubt as to the fact that this is what I was born to do. I absolutely love it. I enjoy my subject. I keep coming back to this theme of, you know, beyond the subject. I really do. I would like to think that over these 40 sessions now, I've maybe been able to, in the slightest way even, influence boys and girls in a way to helping them towards doing what they want to do with their lives.
If I talk to someone who wasn't Dundee, they usually ask what school they went to. As soon as I say I went to Dundee High School, there's one of 2 reactions. Either they were there and they sort of understand, or they weren't there and they think you're kind of toffee-nosed. I remember one particular journey back where we came back via a housing scheme which was kind of like a little bit rough, and kind of boys came and sat at the back of the bus with me and my pal and kind of intimidated us and made us feel like we were going to get horribly beaten up and cut about the face and neck, but fortunately they only threatened it, you know. I think they took our house badges off us. Playboy was like, they'll take your house badge off you, that's how bad we are. I went to Dundee College of Education for 4 years. And my third year there, I joined the College Dramatic Society and met John Whitehead, who lectured in drama at the college. We've been friends ever since.
I can remember, in fact, when we first met, Richard, you came in to a reading of the College Dramatic Society. Yes. Now, at that time, we didn't know what we were going to do, but we ended up doing a play called The Happiest Days of Your Life. And I remember when you came in first, you know, you were kind of young, you were sort of trendy and revolutionary and all the rest of it in these days.
But, well, you actually have,
well, yes. In fact, you see, we did The Happiest Days of Your Life,
as you
remember. Oh, Richard, when I look at this, you were a natural farcer.
Very well put.
Oh, oh, if you pardon me, yes. Here, have a look at that.
That's me on the right, by the way. We were kind of, by night, trying to write bits of the review, get bits together, organise rehearsals. And then, of course, we ended up having... Well, my final teaching practice, I think it turned out that you actually had to come and give me a final crit.
Yes, I
which
came...
kind of could have spoiled a beautiful friendship, really.
Well, you might have felt that, Richard, but I didn't, in fact. And when I came to see you working, it was at Whitfield Secondary School. Yeah. You did, I remember very clearly, you did a lesson with called On the Outsider, in which you showed children that you put children in situations in which they didn't fit. And there were reasons that they didn't fit.
So you're saying I took a bunch of bands from Dundee and it alienated them?
No.
Yeah, that's really typical of me.
You taught them, Richard.
Funny enough, I ended up teaching there, and the guy that was working there, Larry Young at the time, I think was leaving.
Yes.
And I think actually it was kind of an interesting crossroads for me, because I think he said, oh, there might be a job coming up here. Not offering me a job, but I think it was at that point I decided actually not to go into teaching, which is quite interesting, because I then decided that I would do something else.
And you did something else, and you've never regretted it. And we've all enjoyed the something else that you've done.
Just before I left Dundee, I got to know a place called St Mary's Cathedral. The cathedral did youth work similar to the kind of thing I was doing after I left college. 15 years on from that, I found myself at home at Episcopal worship. So more than anywhere else, this seems like home.
See Dundee, nothing like it. See Paris, it's hard trees. See Dundee, nothing like it. See me, let you see. See trains, half a long journey though. See me, love to think. See you, watch you comfy. Oh well, I like you just the same. The further north you go, buildings grow, trees don't show. People seem to let you know they're only saying no. There's a place for me, it's here. It's where I feel I'm really needed. You're really needed. The further north you go.